Good morning and welcome back to Tactics Board. The optimism maybe isn't flowing yet, but there's definitely a steady trickle back at Carrow Road after a decent run of results and a very good performance this weekend against West Brom. They obviously beat the Baggies 2-0 and it feels like David Wagner is building up some credit again after obviously that poor run of form throughout the winter. But now they appear to have come out of that spell, but the difficult fixtures continue with a trip to Elland Road tomorrow evening and Leeds United. They obviously face former head coach and sort of legendary figure in the recent past of Norwich City, Daniel Farkeball, and it feels like it might be quite a similar test to that West Brom one. I think Leeds probably have a little bit more quality than Norwich faced at the weekend, but they do also like to dominate possession, to pass the ball through the thirds and to penetrate teams that way. I think it will be a little bit more patient and a little bit more slow than West Brom tried to do. Obviously, Norwich fans will know from their time under Farker how patient he likes his teams to be, how short the passes can be and how long teams can be, or his teams can be camped on opposition, on the edge of opposition boxes, and how long they wait to strike. I think West Brom try and do it a little bit quicker. They try and use the flanks a little bit more to get that done and then cut back. And although cutbacks are quite a big part of Daniel Farker's philosophy and how Leeds United sort of hurt teams, they will probably build it up a little bit slower through the middle. So that means maybe a little bit less of a test for the fullbacks. And probably earlier in the season, I would have said that was bad news. But I think the likes of Jack Stacey, Sam McCallum when he was in the team, maybe even Dimi Yunulis to an extent, have actually improved those defensive characteristics and attributes in that game. So I think against West Brom they were very suited to that. Against Leeds it might be more of a test for the likes of Kenny McLean and Gabriel Sara, who did look a lot more solid, to be fair, in the middle against West Brom and looked more able to cope with those balls coming through the middle and with the threat that West Brom provided through the middle. But they'll just have to do that more consistently and to an incredibly high quality against Leeds, because we know the sorts of players that Leeds have and the sort of threat that they can provide. They showed that obviously at Carrow Road earlier in the season when they came from 2-0 behind and were 3-2 and obviously won the game 3-2 in the end. They have got very dangerous players, the likes of Somerville, Dan James, Joel Pirro, Jorginho Rutter was actually excellent against Norwich, and although his goal numbers this season haven't maybe been right up there, he has been that key figurehead in their team that maybe doesn't get all the credit but really provides a lot for them. So they've got a number of really quality players, Glenn Kamara, Ethan Ampadu in the midfield, and for the Championship it's an absolutely excellent squad. So you can see why the pressure's on Daniel Farker, and they will definitely be going into this one as favourites. But Norwich, to be fair, in that game earlier on in the season proved that they can sort of get around Leeds tactically. I thought they deserved that 2-0 lead when they went in at half-time, and they looked very good for it. And you have to look back at that period and remember they didn't have Josh Sargent, and we've seen what an impact he can make since he's come back. Obviously, 2 goals already against Southampton and West Brom, and tactically you can see that he brings the most out of the team as well. Ashley Barnes looks a completely different player next to Sargent, and it looks like it could be a good contest compared to sort of October time when we were looking at that Leeds game at Carrow Road and thinking this might be a real struggle for Norwich. I think now, although Leeds go into it as favourites, there will be some quiet confidence from the Norwich side, and I think you've seen that from Wagner going into the game, but he will have to pick the right players, so I'm going to dive straight into the 11 that I think he'll trust with this. So I've gone for Angus Gunn in goal, Jack Stacey at right back, Shane Duffy and Ben Gibson at centre back, Dimitris Yunus at left back, Gabriel Sara and Kenny McLean in the centre of midfield, with Jonathan Rowe on the right, Borja Sainz on the left and Ashley Barnes behind Josh Sargent. Up front, you'll notice that was unchanged from that West Brom game, and although there are going to be subtle differences, I think that's partly because of how well they played and partly because tactically it's probably a similar sort of task. Norwich had around 40% possession at the weekend, and they don't really look like they'll have much more than that at Elland Road, if not less, to be honest. And although that has been criticised, and I don't find it the most entertaining, to be honest, a lot of the time, I thought actually watching back that game against West Brom, because of how quickly they moved it when they were on it and how much more fluid they looked on the ball, it can be entertaining and it can get you off your seat, and you can feel a bit more like Norwich are in the game and are proactive and are trying to achieve something, rather than maybe some other games like that Southampton one where, yes, they got a point, but they had 25% possession. They sort of let a team dominate. And I remember speaking to Ben Napper shortly after his appointment about the fact that you don't have to dominate games with possession. When we talk about domination, there's a lot of talk about possession and territory, but you can sort of manage things and dominate the game without having all the possession, and I thought that was what they did really well against West Brom. And if you're not going to have a lot of possession, really that's what you want to see. You want to have the idea that the team is still in control of the game, is still deciding which way it's going, and I think that's how it went against West Brom. I think Wagner will go with the same team because that's how he'll want it to go against Leeds. But just to take you through it quickly, I think Angus Gunn has been absolutely excellent, and to be fair, has improved the sides of his game that people have been calling on him to improve. He's much more commanding of his area in the last few months. He's coming out quicker. I think there was a last-ditch tackle on Saturday that had hearts in mouths, but he timed it absolutely perfectly, and it wasn't the first time in the last few weeks. He's pulled off some fantastic saves, been very, very good, and you can't really question his place in the team, for now and probably into the fairly distant future. Right back, I already spoke about Stacey and Yanulis and how I felt the fullbacks were improving defensively. That's no doubt something Wagner will have looked to improve on after the defensive record earlier in the season. And I called on Stacey to improve a little bit in the last few times I've done this video, because we all saw how high the levels he can reach were earlier on in the season. But I think he's actually getting back up to those levels. I think this is the best he's played since sort of the first month in the season, and you can see the impact that confidence is having on him. So I think he can probably have more of an impact than maybe he would have done a month or so ago, and a similar impact to what he would have done at the start of the season, and it's really encouraging to see that. At centre-back, Wagner hailed sort of Ben Gibson, and I thought actually that was his best performance for a little while as well. He has, to be fair, at Championship level, produced a good number of decent performances, and I think at this level he can be very good, especially in this system which Norwich are playing now, where they don't really look to dominate possession. Their defensive line is fairly deep, so he doesn't have to worry about runs in behind too much, and when it's in front of him, he's absolutely excellent. There was one very, very well-timed tackle on Brandon Thomas Asante in the first half on Saturday, and I think that sort of sparked a little bit of debate over penalty and whether it was. I don't think it was one, and I thought that was perfectly timed, and that probably summed up his sort of game and how good he can be at this level. And to be fair, he made up for that mistake and came in there. So I think he was really, really good against West Brom. I think he can continue to produce that, and with Grant Hanley only back in training today, I think, from what Wagner said at his press conference, it feels unlikely that he's going to be able to start. And to be honest, I think he'd be hard-pressed to do so, given how well those two played against West Brom. In the centre of midfield, I thought it was, to be fair, just another notch on the belt of how good Kenny McLean has been this season, that he was able to step into midfield, and I think he won the Player of the Match award at the end of the game, voted by the fans, got that assist for Sargent, and the fact that he's been playing sort of between two positions for a number of weeks now, and he's still able to play both of them at such a high level, just speaks to how good he can be and how consistent he is, really. I think he'll be a key player in this one as well, if Norwich are to get anything from it. And of course, he sort of turned down Leeds' interest, although Norwich obviously rejected a bid. He wasn't keen to go, and I think he'll probably be keen to prove himself again against a head coach who clearly values his contribution a lot, under a head coach that values his contribution a lot. So I think we'll see Kenny McLean and Gabriel Sara in the midfield, and Chris Sutton actually called on Sara to improve that defensive side of his game in his most recent column. I think this will be another step up to do that, but if he can do that, then that will be excellent news for Norwich, and it will help stop the sort of probably the flood of attack that's going to come through the Leeds middle. On the right, John Rowe, what can you say about him? 13 goals already this season. Another moment of quality in that West Brom game to time his run and to get there to finish off what was a fantastic team move. I think as long as he's here until the end of the season, he won't be coming out of the lineup, as long as he's fit and not suspended, of course. And yeah, you can't really question that because he's just been absolutely fantastic. And it's good to see Sainz getting a run of games. I know fans were absolutely desperate to see him at the start of the season, first when he was injured and then when Wagner was sort of holding off on him. But he's clearly proved himself to the head coach now and has earned his place. And it's good to see him getting that consistent game time. Hopefully that turns into some more tangible contributions. I know he scored a couple of goals, but I think there is still more to see from the Spaniard. And I think we will see that before long as he continues to get that game time and continues to get onto the pitch. And Ashley Barnes and Josh Sargent, I already spoke about both of them really. What can you say about Josh Sargent? I think he's had exactly the same impact that he did at the start of the season, and the impact that I think most Norwich fans were hoping he would when he returned from injury. He's been excellent, and he's brought the best out of Barnes, who I think a lot of people have been very critical of in the past few months, and that's probably fair in my view. I don't think he's contributed loads in terms of technical and tactical and physical attributes. Yes, people talk about the dressing room attributes and what he adds to the sort of leadership qualities of the team, but I think he's needed to show more on the pitch. And to be fair, since Sargent has come back in, he's been absolutely excellent, and he's been back to the sorts of levels that he was at the start of the summer. So I think that's good news for everybody. I'm expecting to see an unchanged lineup at Elland Road, but with David Wagner, we never quite know. So it'll be interesting to follow. We will obviously have everything covered over at pinkun.com. And if you want to go to pinkun.com/subscribe, we've got a great offer there. Just $1.99 for the first 2 months and $2.99 thereafter for loads of exclusive content, all the coverage of Norwich City you need. So if you go into Elland Road, we'll see you there. If not, I'm sure you'll be watching on from afar. And we'll see you soon. Thank you for joining me on Tactics Board.